Hi everyone, and welcome to another Professional Advantage webinar. My name's Steve Furhad and I'm a Client Engagement Leader here at Professional Advantage, and I'm joined by Christina. Hi Christina.
Hi Steve, hi everyone.
Christina is one of our senior consultants and has a lot of experience helping clients with SunSystems, and my role is to help clients on a number of technologies throughout PA's offering. And if you're anything like me, when you came back from the break, you maybe felt a little bit sluggish. Now, just hitting my straps back into things, it's only taken until February, but if you were feeling a bit sluggish, then I wonder how your systems were going. Unlike us, they don't get breaks, they don't get holidays to recharge. And today what we wanted to do is talk about archiving and a way that if your systems are a little bit sluggish and a little bit slow, you can just give them a bit of a tune-up, a bit of rev up to get that performance back up and running. Now, to some, archiving is not the coolest, most exciting, most glamorous topic, like our friend here.
It's not me.
No, it's not me. It could be me. Whilst it's not interesting and exciting, there are other things in the SunSystems world or in the world in general that are a little bit more exciting, more sexy, more cool, like this car. And I like to think of maybe SunSystems or some of your other systems in reporting and analytics, like this car, when you get it shiny, new, cool. But as the years go past and you've been using that car for a while, maybe it loses a few horsepower, maybe it gets a little bit slower at times. And sometimes using something like SunSystems over years and years without giving it a tune-up, what used to take no time at all can take a little bit more time. And so if you think that whilst archiving on its own might not be cool and interesting, the reporting and analytics is, putting them together sometimes can help with performance, and this is something that's a little bit cooler and more interesting with our nerd in the front seat driving that cool car at maximum capacity. Interesting link I've made from cars and nerds to archiving, but today we're going to walk you through some of the benefits of archiving, including increased performance. We're going to talk you through how to prepare and plan for it, what actually happens, and Christina's going to be really nice and give us a bit of a look under the hood and show you how to perform that process. Today we'd like to make the webinar as interactive as possible, and to do that we'd like you to get involved. You can, on your GoToMeeting webinar pane, you can type in questions as we go, and we've got some time at the end, or if it's appropriate throughout the webinar, we'll stop and answer some questions. Maybe you might want to comment or endorse something that we're saying. We'd like you to really get involved. And the first thing we'd like to do whilst getting involved is we'd like to, I guess, run a quick poll, get a feel for our audience. Yes. Christina.
We'd like to ask you first, before we go any further, have you archived before?
So now you should be seeing something on your screen. Pick the option that's most appropriate, never or yes, and we can see a few people going through, and we've got a good amount of people who have responded. I'll close that poll. We've got about 75% of people voted, and the results.
Okay, so we have a quite high amount of never, which is 83%, and we have 30% for yes. So that's cool. So maybe that's the reason why you have attended this webinar.
It should be good. Maybe you'll get some good tips for those who've never done it before. Well, let's quickly think about why we archive now. I used the analogy of the car, but let's perhaps see something that's a bit closer to home as far as filing and files. I remember my first role in uni was doing the filing in the accounts payable department at a company, and I hated it. There were about 15 filing cabinets. Looks a little bit like what you can see here, and I remember after every payment run having to go and put things in the right order. Then you get asked to query, and finding the right folder would take you ages. Really, with a small amount of data, you could do it quite quickly, but as transactions accumulated, things became slow. If you think about that manual process, well, kind of very similar to your SunSystems.
Yeah, exactly. So when we're visiting clients, someone consultants, some of the clients are actually complaining how slow the system is. So it's basically when we ask them how long they have been using the system, it's quite a while, and then all of the transactions already accumulate in the ledger.
So we've got instances of clients where they've 20 years they've been using the system. Their ledger is full of 20 years of data.
And even printing a report like a trial balance, it's taking them time.
Right. Okay. Even though technology is sort of increasing, the sorts of servers we're seeing now are much more powerful still. Searching through 1 million records versus searching through 100,000 is always going to be quicker.
Yeah.
So we all get the concept of how we do this manually, moving physical files and bits of paper around. Walk us through what happens when you archive in SunSystems.
Yes. So when we do the archiving in SunSystems, it will basically remove all the circles or the redundant transactions from your ledger and replace them with the summarized and balanced transactions.
So what happens to when they're removed? Do you lose transactions when you archive?
No. Depends actually. So, but basically the intention here is to move those transactions from the actual ledger into an archived ledger.
Right, and the idea is with less transactions in that ledger,
Yep.
reporting and processing in SunSystems gets quicker.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So we actually have two options when we're doing the archiving. First is we have what we call a period clear down. The period clear down when you perform the archiving is going to accumulate transaction or give you a summary on period by period basis.
Right.
And there is another option where it's the year clear down, which actually summarizes and gives you a transaction only at the end of the year.
Right, I understand.
Yes.
So we're balancing either by period or year,
Year.
depending on your requirements moving forward.
Exactly. All right, which will basically give you a more compact and easy to manage system.
Excellent. So can you talk us through some of the things that you do in preparation? There's quite a things. It's not something you just do without any planning. You do want to think about it. It's a bit of a something that when you want to plan for and give some thought. What are the kind of things you need to do?
Okay, first thing first. Okay, no man is an island. Okay, so if people from finance, basically we have to let our IT people know first that we're going to do the archiving. Why? It's because we have to let them know that when we do the archiving, we need more space on the server. Okay?
Right, so these are things, just for some background, when you run the archiving process, sometimes the database can do things like write a log file of all the things that it's doing, and if you're running for, I guess, a few years of data, then you just have to make sure there's enough disk space for that log file to grow. It might be from a few megabytes to a few gigabytes, but you really just want to let IT know that you're going to perform something on the system. There are going to be some changes to the database as far as transactions moving around, and maybe a log file that gets generated that if you're doing a lot of data for, they need to just make sure there's enough disk space.
Yes.
Talk us through the next.
The next thing, which is very important, is just a very simple tick in our ledger setup. There is an option there that is called archiving transactions. If it is ticked, we have to tick it first, and meaning when we do the archiving, we would like the system to put all our transactions into an archive table.
Okay, right.
And then another thing is, before you do the archiving, make sure that you have all the reports that you need. We have a list of like sample journal listing, account listing, but it is not limited to this kind of report. So everything that you feel comfortable having, and then something that you can go back to when you need them, please print them before you do this.
Okay, so just keep a track of audit trail reports like your journal listings and accounts.
Yep.
What about on the day?
On the day itself, make sure all operators have logout. Okay? If the operators are not in and you can see they're still in the system, force clear them.
Okay. Maybe an email, send an email letting people know that they need to be out of the system, say on an evening.
Worst comes to worst, you can clear them.
You could.
Okay.
And what about any precautions or advice when you're doing this? You've done this quite a bit, Christina.
Yeah, you have to make sure that you have a backup. Right?
Yeah, I can think of one instance, a story a long time ago where a client did take a backup and did have to use it. They had forgotten to enable archiving transactions when they did their clear down, and basically without ticking that box, they ran the process and everything was archived, balances were posted into the ledger, and they lost that. I guess that transactional data, no dramas. They noticed that straight away when they tested after doing the archiving, and they just restored to backup and then made that change and ran the process again, and it was all gravy.
Okay. And for those attendees who are still using SunSystems version 4, there is also another option, another step, which is to create an archive table first before you do the actual archive.
Okay, I might just remind you if there's any questions you have. We're really flying through some things at a high level very quickly, but want to, I guess, make it a short webinar and get through the demo. If there are any questions that you have, if things were skipped over or you have, please feel free to drop them in there. And I can see one's just come through now. But the question was, do you lose any transactions on all account types? We'll show you that in a second. There's a part of the demo. There's different account types you have set up, and that will determine what gets archived and what gets moved across. But essentially, no, you won't lose any transactions. They just moved. Okay. No further questions at this. Do you want to just jump in and walk us through some of the screens that we would go through to perform this function? Firstly, tell me about the version that you've got there. Some people may be familiar with this, may not.
Okay, so the version of the system I'm going to use is SunSystems version 6. So don't worry if you're using a different version, the procedure will still be the same. Okay, so first thing first, when we are setting up the system, so we just basically create those chart of accounts. We don't notice what we call here a balance type. In the balance type of the chart of accounts, we have two options, balance forward or an open item. So this is important when you are doing your ledger archiving. Balance forward means when you perform the archiving, the system is going to archive everything within that period that you have specified. And open item means the system is only going to archive those closed transactions. So basically, like for example, suppliers, okay? So the system is only going to archive if it is reconciled, if it is closed or allocated, if it has been paid and correct. Okay. All the rest, if it's open, it will be intact.
So that won't get archived if they're all.
Okay. So next thing in the procedure that we have done, we have ledger setup. Okay. So in the ledger setup, there is a tab called transaction rules. So there is here what we call ledger archiving. Just tick it. So just amend and make sure that it is ticked. This is very important that you tick it, else the system is going to delete the transactions when you perform the archiving. Okay. And the next thing, so we have done all of the things that we have discussed, and then what we're going to do now is to do the actual ledger archiving. Okay. So let me show you first the existing transactions or the before transactions before we do the archive. So we have here account code 10213. So these are the existing accounts inside the system, which is basically for year 2005. We've got plenty of transactions up to period 12. So what our aim here is to do the archiving and let the system just leave a summary per period. So what we're going to do is go to SunSystems and then just go to the archiving procedure, which is in this case is called ledger clear down. Okay. So you can see here the one we mentioned earlier, period clear down and year clear down. In this case, I'm going to select period clear down. Okay.
This gives a balance per month.
Yes, exactly. So all we have to do is put in here the last period of the month that I'm going to archive, which is period 12/2005. I'll say OK. And I'm going to select here the account code. So mind you, if I don't put anything in here, the system is going to archive all the accounts that I have in the system. But for this purpose, we're very time critical.
Yeah.
So that's why we're going to just put in 10213, or the account that I have shown you is 10213. And then I say OK. So you also have different options here. Recalculate asset balance. This account is not asset related, so I'll just leave it. And then analysis code consolidation. So this is basically, if you leave it empty, the balance that the system is going to give you is per combination of analysis code. For this purpose, I'm going to tick this because I want the system, the ledger, to be more compact and just give me a balance for each period. Check transaction reference. This is actually, I haven't seen any in Australia, where we are using agency or a broker in our supplier. So that's why this is not important at this point. Switch off auditing. So you can see the default is ticked because we don't want the system to monitor whatever we're doing. It will create a very huge flood. Okay? So we're happy with this. I'll say OK. It's going to open the list of the analysis dimensions that I have in the system. So it's just basically giving me the option, would you like to consolidate everything? Just say, yeah, I'm happy just to the system to give me one balance for each month.
But I guess with people that are on the webinar now, back at their offices, if they want to have things where you get some analytics on, say, cost center or location, you'd set those settings so that you could then get not a balance per account per month, but a balance per account per month per cost center or
possession of the company. Yes? So cleared out, I'll just say yes. And now it is running it. So yeah. So depending on the number of transactions, depending on how huge your ledger is, then it will take those time.
Now Helen's just asked a question about how do you know when to archive. There's quite a few things you want to think about, how many years of data you've got. We'll talk a little bit more in detail. We're going to actually run another poll to get, I guess, a bit of crowdsourcing, a bit of idea from everyone that's on the call, how much data they need. Really, you want to take the minimalist approach. If you're constantly inquiring in detail what happened 5 years ago, and you need to keep accessing that data, then you can still get to it after you've archived, but the steps are a little bit different, as we'll show you in a moment. If you've got 20 years of data, then we definitely suggest you don't need those in your ledger table. You want to ship them off. And you know what's common, clients, I guess, oscillate. I don't want to preempt the poll, but different periods for how long year-on-year type analysis they do and deep drill down they do on data. But the lighter you can get it, the more, just like a car, the lighter you can get it, the quicker the thing's going to run regardless of the engine size. But we'll get more about that in a second.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Now I can click OK. All right. So that's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Excel, and I have here an after worksheet, and I'm going to recalculate my worksheet. Okay, there you go. So we can see here period 1 up to period 12, the system just showed us balance forward balances, and then these are the values. Okay, so that is the after, and this is the before, so we can actually compare. So mind you, this is basically, if you would like to, if you have advanced inquiry or the systems, you can actually use the ledger inquiry in the system, and then you can still retrieve those information that you have archived. For this demo purposes, I'm going to use advanced inquiry. I'll go to my properties, and then just to make sure I have 10213, and inquiry. If I don't tick archive transaction, the system is going to show me the same thing as what we have in the after worksheet. However, I'm going to say include the archive transaction, and I'll just say OK. Yep, and I'll just double click just to show those lists. Then again, you can see all of those transactions if you would like to inquire them and have a look.
So I guess one of the ideas here is you're going to just a different option there when you're running these reports within this. And go back to Helen's question, if you're, I guess, continually doing this for transactions that might be 5 years old, and then you're doing things that are perhaps last month's transactions and you want to see them in the same place, you can see there's an extra step for doing that, so you probably may not want to archive if you're doing that. But if you're like most businesses, typically 1 or 2 years worth of data, they'll be really traversing and getting into the detail. The rest, you would care about balances and what happened at a year-by-year level. So maybe it's 1 or 2 years of live data, and then anything after that is archived. Certainly not 20 years of live data. Cool. All right. Was there anything else you wanted to show us within the SunSystems world? Is there anything else anyone wanted to see? I've got a question, a bit of a technical question. Is the data stored in the SunSystems database? Yes, it is. It's just a different table. We have essentially two tables that we're concerned with here. There's the ledger table, and I'm not sure the exact name of the table. It's the ledger archive table.
Archive table, yeah.
Or something very close to that. Where
yeah. I think it has an ARC something. Yeah.
So I guess if you're using any BI tools like the Infor BI or anything like that, and you've got any data feeds from the ledger table, you want to think about that. If you've got any other systems that sit over the ledger table, then there's just something to think about how you incorporate, or whether you incorporate the older data, or just remember you will have the balance transactions there. So you still get the your trial balances and your end of year numbers and your year-on-year analytics at a macro level will still be there. Just the details won't be there.
Yeah, one thing, Steve, before I forget, is just those things that we have talked about, like the tick in the ledger setup, that option of ledger archiving. It only applies to the actual ledger. Because mind you, if you have budget ledgers and you would like to do archiving for them, the system, regardless of the tick that you have in the archiving option, it will delete everything in there.
Excellent. So I guess you'll still get your balances, you still get your, oh no, you won't get your balance at all.
You won't get any balance. You will still have the balances in the ledger, however, the transaction itself will be deleted.
Okay, so if I'm looking at a budget 5 years old, that's 5 years old, do I need to see the transactions? No, I might want to see by an account what the budget was, and I guess you could still archive. You're never going to really do a detailed drill down. I don't know. Probably a question for another time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Can you do a period clear down for an account and do another year-end clear down for all accounts later on? So can you have a mix of, I might do period clear downs for some accounts and year clear downs for others? You can have a mix. Okay, great. Good question. Right, we'll come back to questions in a moment. At this point, I think we're going to run another poll. So we've talked a little bit about the how much data to keep. It'd be interesting to see what the audience thinks, how much data for your particular business you might want to keep. So this is, if you think about it, if I'm archiving 5 years, let's say my organisation has 10 years worth of data, I'm archiving, let's say if I was going to archive 5 years worth of data, then the answer would be I would keep 5 years of live data. So you can set a poll, how much data do you think you should keep? And that's in your ledger file and essentially not archived. So it might be a month, might be you want to keep 7 years of data. It'd be interesting to see. So far, no one's saying that they would keep only 1 month at a data. We thought that might be a bit. I have seen it before.
Just a reminder: you cannot archive current period, and if you archive, like for example, last year's transaction, the system is going to prompt you just a warning and letting you know that this is last year's transaction. Would you like to proceed? Something like that.
All right, I will close that poll and here are the results. Interesting. We're closely split. A lot of organisations saying they'd like to keep or a lot of people on the webinar saying they'd like to keep 2 to 5 years. Some people are saying 5 to 7 years. No one's saying they really need more than 7 years worth of live data in their ledger table. So that's about what we'd expect. About what we expect. Probably, in my experience, more clients are in that 2 to 5 year band. 5's are always an interesting number. 2 is also not a. Hopefully, that's some good. A good idea of where you stand with other organisations. So if you've got lots more than 10 years worth of data, then you probably should want to consider doing your archiving. I wanted to just, talk you through a couple of other things that you want to consider whilst I just get rid of that poll. If you think about the car analogy for a second, we talked about one aspect of getting that car tuned, and so archiving might be the oil and the brakes and maybe greasing the bearings or something like that. There are other things that you can be doing to improve the performance of your system. Essentially, a good thing that clients like to do is diagnose if there are some performance issues, what actually is it. Now, if you've got 20 years worth of data and there are millions of transactions that haven't archived, that's a good first step. But there might be other things that, from a technical perspective, that you might need, or even from the way reports run and the system works. One thing that we offer with our clients is some of our technical consultants to pop out and do some analysis and diagnose if there are some things that are taking a long time to run and things are sluggish, what the root cause is, and then they can, once they've looked under the hood, give you an indication to things that you can do to increase performance. All right, any time we've got about 5 minutes left, and we didn't want to run it over an hour because we were very aware that archiving is not the coolest, most interesting, exciting thing to talk about. We have a question from Peter. Peter wanted to know, are we able to receive some documentation or some notes explaining the process that Christina outlined? Well, we are recording this webinar. We will post it up on a YouTube video. There's some good help on this within the system. You don't have to look far to look at that process. So you can review what Christina did in the webinar. You can look at the notes that are within the help of within SunSystems. You can talk about talk to any of your consultants or account managers about preparing for the process and things that you might want to be aware of if there's something unique about your organisation. The next question from Mark is the process the same for Sun 5? Great question. Yes. It's identical from Sun 4 to Sun 5. There is one little extra thing you've got to do in Sun 4 if you want to talk us through that.
So basically what we have done is applicable to SunSystems version 5 and version 6. And the only thing that we did not show is for version 4, wherein you need to create a table first for the year that you're going to archive before you perform the actual archiving. But apart from that, it's exactly the same.
If there's any other questions you have, feel free to let us know. A couple of little things, a word from our sponsor. A lot of organisations have been on the call, been working with PA for years and years. We've been around for lots of those, have a great team of over 250 people and over 1,000 clients. We're an award-winning worldwide organisation with a great set of consultants that have been there for a while and have a good tenure, which is really unusual for an IT organisation to have such commitment and tenure with that. You know us for our ERP solutions in SunSystems. You may know us for some of the BI and performance management things that we do, and some of our clients on the call have worked with us on business process management. Some organisations may not know that we do a lot of work in the SharePoint, the intranets and portals and collaboration and communication space, right through to CRM, hosted infrastructure and cloud. So we've got I guess a very broad level of experience and capability when it comes to technology solutions. So if you've been working with BA for a while and haven't, I guess, talked about some of those other things, feel free to go through your account manager or talk to any one of us about how we can help enable a high-performance workplace at your place. We're a couple of minutes early. There is one last question I'll just answer before closing. The archiving and ledger clear-down is basically the same, yes, identical. They're one and the same, ledger clear-down, archive transaction. All right, well, that's really all we have time for. Christina, thanks a lot for showing us under the hood of Sun.
No worries.
Thanks for joining us and taking half an hour out of your day to look at what I think is kind of an interesting, cool thing of archiving. All right, thanks, everyone. Bye now.